those watching and listening around the world. This is Shelor.
All right, we got Bolt Brady coming on today. How's things on your side of the pond, man? What's going on?
I'm having a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, so for coming from California, right?
Yep. Out in Northern California.
Now, you born and bred out there, or?
No, but I've been out here the majority of my life. Yeah, the last 30 years or so. So yeah, I've been out here a while. I like it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
where'd you hail from?
Originally in Colorado,
Okay.
and then we made the trek out here, like I said, like 30 years ago. So
Was this with you and
I
your?
like, you get the mountains and the ocean.
Yeah, you get a little bit of best of both worlds out there. Was this you and your
Yeah.
family that moved out there?
Yeah, and I still live close to my family, so we see each other quite a bit, so that's good.
Nice. So what made y'all just to try to move out there? Oh, I think we got. There we go.
Shitty economy
Yeah.
in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So we made the trek out here and never looked back. Packed the U-Haul and came on out.
Nice. So I did a little DD on you. It looks like you've been playing football all your life, and you got the podcast going. Now you're a sports handicapper, and it seems like you wear a lot of hats. Has that always been kind of your thing?
I played football all the way through college, and that's actually when I started getting into betting on games as well, kind of dipping the feet in watching games and betting on them while we were in college. And then things kind of transpired from there as we went along and taking it a lot more seriously. And now here we are, Bolt Brady and his bro, so my real brother. We have a good time.
Okay. So where'd you play your college football at?
I played at a small school called Menlo College. It's right next to Stanford, actually. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Of course.
Yeah, so we're right next to them. So it was just a really small school, but it was cool because a lot of the 49ers, ex-49ers were our coaches. So like Bill Walsh's son was my receiver coach, and Tom Rathman, who used to play fullback for the Niners, was our offensive coordinator. So it was kind of cool having those guys around.
So did y'all adapt the West Coast offense that way?
We did. So that's been helpful, like as far as handicapping too, because a lot of these teams use a version of the West Coast offense. So, I knew that from 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. So I know Bill Walsh pretty much originated the West Coast offense, correct? So it's more passing than rushing, and then it went to the Bears and Packers. Still pretty much use it today, right?
Yeah, so the West Coast offense was basically, like you mentioned, short passes to kind of replace the run. And then he also gets the running backs involved quite a bit. But yeah, it's a lot of short passes and kind of spread the ball around. So yeah, and it's still around today. It's pretty effective. I would imagine that you could say that most offenses have at least a little bit of the West Coast in it today in the NFL.
Is that because most teams, sorry, let me think I want to say this, most teams they trust more in their receivers than they do the running backs? And that's the reason they go more passing than rushing?
So it's a good question. I think it loosens up the offense or the defense quite a bit, just doing quick passes, just little 3-yard passes. Seem to be a lot more effective than just running it up. And it kind of loosens up the defense a little bit. And then when they get too loose, then I think they come back and run.
Okay. I'm with you now. Huh.
Yeah.
So you played what position were you in all of this?
So I played receiver, and then I returned punts, kickoff returns.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Hold on,
Yeah.
I'm having a little lag issue, and I can't figure out why. I wonder if this is because I think it's on my end, Bolt, so sorry for
Is it?
Yeah, I think for some reason my internet's trying to connect to a different wireless internet for whatever reason, which that's not okay. That don't make sense. All right, I think we're back. All right,
Okay.
uh, so how did you get started? So you played football most of your life. Were you just a true athlete all your life, or did you play any other sports growing up? And
Yeah, I played. Yeah, I played basketball. Yeah, in baseball growing up, and did track and field in high school, and played basketball in high school. So sports were always a part of our upbringing for sure. And I've got kids now, and it's a big part of our life. So yeah, sports are a big part of our life. I mean, that was the reason why we started the podcast, really, too, is because my mom knew about the handicapping, but mom was the one that generated the idea. She said, all you guys do is talk about sports. Why don't you do a podcast? And then the handicap part of it is what makes it a little bit unique is, because we discuss the games and betting on games as well. So, yeah. I mean, we're the family where during Christmas and the holidays, like the football games are on in the background for sure.
yeah, of course they got to be, especially Thanksgiving and Christmas, right?
Well, you'd be surprised though, whatever, works for each family. But sometimes you go to people for the holidays and they don't have the game. And I'm like, put the game on, so.
Yeah, at least put it in the background, right? So.
Yeah, because like my wife's family, they're not into sports that much. So when I used to go over there when we first met, I would have to be like, hey, can we turn on, the football or the basketball game here?
Yeah. Nice. So how did you, all right, so you were an athlete all your life. You've been playing football in college. So how did you get started in the gambling game here or handicap game?
Yeah.
Is
there
a specific term I should be using or?
Gambling, yapping. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it starts off, gambling, and then and then I turned into more of a handicapper because in the beginning there's so much to learn. I didn't know diddly squat about betting when I first went to college. I didn't know anything about it, and there was this kid that was in our English class that hit this 4-teamer, which means it's hard enough to win one game, but he won 4 games. And so he won like $5,000. And I remember he brought the wad with him to English class. And so that kind of caught my attention. I was like, whoa, what's going on? But there's so much to learn. It's a lot like the stock market in the sense that is a market, and it is a lot of based on emotion, can move the betting lines, just like the stock market. Prices can, emotion can affect those numbers as well. So there's a lot to learn, and I still learn today, So once I start kind of, putting a few bucks on some games, and there's no courses that tell you how to bet on games, right? You can't sign up in college, so it's the school of hard knocks for sure.
Of course.
And then then it kind of grew because some of my buddies would call me up like every single weekend, literally, and ask me, who'd I like in the NFL. And then I started to figure out that these guys are winning thousands of dollars off my pick. So then I kind of was like, all right, time to make this official. Now it's time to get paid.
I like your style, man. Yeah, you got to get your own little piece of the pie too, right?
Right.
So you said earlier it was a 4-teamer, right? That
yeah.
Big off. So is that also called? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's almost also called a parlay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But there's also, so my background, my family was big card players, and also some side, like Texas Hold'em, some regular 5-card poker, and I got jumped into it early. My uncles would just throw me at some card tables with them at family get-togethers and stuff, and that's how I learned. And then all of a sudden they would start, they would bet horses more than they would sports games. And so they would slowly kind of teach me what the differences in betting was. So I know obviously what a parlay is, but then you have different ones, so like a spread, a money line, an over-under, and all those. Do you kind of play all of them? And when you throw out your picks, or do you have like one? Yeah, do you have one go-to you go to with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So definitely played the different spreads on the games, so like in the latest, in the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs were giving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 3 points. So that means when the game starts, Tampa Bay's already up 3-0 is a way to think of it.
Correct.
And then over-unders, so like in that game, the Super Bowl, I think the over-under was around roughly 52 maybe. So that means, the two teams, do you think their scores combined will be 52 or below 52? And we do that. And the money line is if you want to take the spread of the equation and just say, I think, Kansas City's going to win. I don't want to have to give them 3 points. But of course, you have to pay a little bit more to do that. And I do that sometimes, but it can get a little bit expensive when you're taking like the favorite to win the game. You might have to put down like $300 to win. And you get a couple of those as losses, and they start to add up. So I don't do the money line.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So do you usually play parlays, or do you just?
No, that's a good question. Rare,
those are tough, right? Those are tough.
Yeah, they're kind of. Like you said, you play cards. It's like, when you go to the back table and they have like where you can win, like, if you get two hearts, or you get 3 times your bet, and people put like $1 down next to it, try to 3-1 if their 2 cards are hearts or whatever.
Yeah.
It's typically not a wise investment to do parlay cards. I'll just put it like that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I have buddies that when they go to the casinos that they'll do parlay cards because your odds are you could get like 3-1 or 5-1. So if you put down $100, 5-1, you could win like $500. But there's a reason why those odds go up, and it's because it's difficult to hit. It's hard enough to hit one game, much less hit multiple games, at the same time.
So if you were me, I bet randomly. Just I get on FanDuel or whatever and just decide to throw out a couple bucks on something. So if you were how do I want to say this? If you were telling a new bettor what maybe the best chances for a type of bet would be, would you say just go for the spread, just go for the money line?
Yeah, I would say. I would suggest first like picking out. How much you're going to bet and stick with that. So like, let's say it's $20 or $50 a game, whatever you feel comfortable with. And people ask, well, how do I know what a good amount is? It's if you don't need to look at your phone every 2 seconds to see if you're winning or losing, that's a good amount to put on a game. And so I pick that amount and stick with it.
Okay.
Because what happens is people will they might win a game or two. Let's say, they're putting $50 on a game and they win 2 and they're up like $100. Then next thing you know, they go, I'm going to put 150 on this game. And then they lose. And next thing you know, now they're down. My advice would be to pick the amount you feel comfortable with and stick with it. And then, I think over-unders or spreads, there's usually more information out there about spreads, like handicappers talking about the spread. So it's probably, if you're looking for some information, that's probably the route to go.
That makes perfect sense. So
yeah,
when you're looking for information, all right, so just you on a daily basis, I mean, good. I'm glad you brought that up. So when you're doing your DD, your due diligence, you're making your picks for the week or however you decide to do it. What do you have any certain sites you go to? Is this just off base in your head? What are you watching games? Like, where do you pick up your info, I guess is what I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, I focus on pro football, basketball, and college football, basketball, and then pro golf.
Okay.
Those are the games that I focus in on. And so the NFL is, king. And so with that, at least for me, it is, and most people out there, they like to watch the NFL. So I get the NFL channel, which is like, you can watch all the games, like every game that's played, you can watch it, the fast version of it. I mean, there's no like huddles or timeouts, which is pretty cool. Oh. So the game is played like in like an hour and a half. or no, I mean, like less than an hour and a half, probably like an hour and 15 minutes.
I didn't realize
And
that.
so I will watch, Chris, I'll watch pretty much every game every weekend. After the weekend, I'll watch pretty much every game. And there are some sites like that I'll use for, not because I care what anyone's opinion is on a game, because I'll never, no offense to anyone else that's out there, but I just don't trust it as much. But there is, some golden nuggets out there, like certain stats or stuff that I'll pick up, like maybe a team, the week before gave up a lot of rushing yards, but, you find out that they're missing, their 2 inside linebackers. So maybe it was just a one-off. Those types of things I'll read for.
Okay.
So I'll do a little research like that, but mainly watching the game, especially when it comes to football, because I feel like I understand it quite a bit with my background.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You played the game, so you got that mentality of what's going on, like while you're watching, and what you see different stuff than I would, correct?
Right. Yeah, probably. And I think, one of the things that helps with my handicapping is that I think that I can see talent really well, and I kind of can go through the bullshit, like when someone's really hyping someone up, like, oh, this guy's incredible, or he's such an amazing quarterback, when I'll watch him, be like, yeah, he's not that great, and so because that will dictate the lines. Like when these guys make the line, like, Tampa Bay -3 or Detroit +7 or whatever it may be, they make those lines sometimes with the public in the back of their mind. Like if they think, hey, everyone's going to take Tom Brady this game, they'll actually shade the line because they know, for example, the first game of the season, I don't know who Tampa Bay plays right now, but the books say, hey, everyone's going to take Tom Brady and the Bucs this week, the first week.
Yeah.
So they'll actually make it so that the line, they'll take the public into consideration with that.
So is that how, like Vegas makes these odds? Is that they're looking at the public, they're looking at everything? I always just figured, they got a guy from The Simpsons, the writer for The Simpsons that predicts everything, and because they predict it almost down to the T, and it blows my mind.
Yeah, so they do use computers to a certain degree, like as far as how much offense a team typically does versus the defense and this and that. But you do have guys that kind of sit in the back room, these bookmakers that have done it for a long time, and there's tons of sports books out there, obviously, that are in the United States and offshore. And basically, the books just watch what which a couple of the main ones, what their lines come out with, and then everyone just copies it. But, to answer your question, initially, yeah, there's a few guys that for these main sports books, and then everyone else just copies it.
Oh, I see.
And then, Chris, you might be interested to know, and then from there, then depending on how much money is put on the game is where the line goes. So, like, for example, if Detroit is playing Green Bay Packers,
okay,
and the line is Green Bay -3, and everyone's taking Green Bay, and they're getting all this money on Green Bay, then they'll start to give Detroit more points. So then they'll say, well, let's give Detroit 4 points now. Will that help getting Detroit money? And if they're like, nope, that still doesn't help, they'll go up to 4.5 moves before the game starts.
That's very interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. So, so it takes a lot of money to move those. But for each specific book, if it was Bolt and Chris's, and I'm like, wow, hey, Chris, this guy just came in and put $1 million on this game. We need to shade the line the other way, because what a sport book wants to do is they want to try to get 50% of the money one way and 50% of the money the other way, typically, not every time. And the reason for that is because they make 10%, right? You have to give $110 to win 100, regardless of what team you take. If you take Green Bay and I take Detroit, we both have to give the sportsbook $110 to win 100. So they're going to win $10 either way, off either one of us. And so if they can get 50% of the people to bet this way and 50% of the people to bet that way, that's the best case scenario for them.
Well, so that's how they got to make their cut too.
Yeah. And then if they get shaded way too, big to one side or the other, and they can't get enough people to take Detroit, for example, they might have to call another sports book and put, in a bet of their own to try to balance things out. But
wow, I didn't know they would do something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of smart people in the industry. Like when my mom, she's always like, oh, betting and that it's so bad and this and that. It's like I always tell her, I said, there's some really, really, really smart people in this industry. A lot of mathematicians for sure.
Yeah. Well, you got to be. I mean,
Yeah.
There's so like, so for example, Moneyball, Billy Bean doing all his statistics he ran and everything. I mean, just to know that you could pick up certain types of people and they don't have to be the best 5-star athletes to be out there. You can still win ball games if you read the stats right. So, yeah, if you know how to read stats and you're a good mathematician, as you said, you can easily do it. Well, maybe not.
Yeah,
easily,
there's some of these. Yeah, there's some of these guys out here, these big syndicates that they're like groups that bet together. They pool their money together and they'll put like large amounts, like hundreds, even like $1 million on a game. And they'll usually have like a mathematician that's in it who that guy or girl most likely doesn't even watch the game. They're just strictly looking at the numbers. And they might not even know like 2 players that play for the Green Bay Packers, but they just know numbers.
So is that kind of, I used to work right after college. I was working at a tire factory, and there was 20, 30 guys that every week would get together and say, let's put on some money for the lottery. And, we'd all throw in $10 or something, and then they go buy like 100 tickets. So kind of the same thing. Is that?
Yeah, more or less. But I think these guys might have contracts between them. I'm curious, did you guys have contracts?
Probably not.
You're right. I mean, if there's 20 guys at the tire factory, they're all putting money in, and this one guy's got the winning ticket, man, you guys all must trust that guy a lot.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of, he would just organize it all, and I guess we were just too dumb to know any different. Like, all right, well, hopefully he don't screw us over. So, but I'm not a millionaire, so I guess either we didn't win or he did screw me over. So I don't know. But I never did hear too many lotto or big Powerballs coming out of my area. So maybe I'll just
yeah. Neither do I. Neither do I.
Well, man, this is good stuff. So I read a statistic. All right. Well, I wanted to talk about this earlier, then I got sidetracked. But so in 2019, I think sports gambling was at 18 billion, and now it's at no. It was like 2.5 billion, and now it's 18 billion. So it's just going to keep growing. Do you think?
Yeah, it's huge when they keep legalizing the state after state, and that's. I'm waiting for them to do it out here in California. It's on the ballot November 22. So we have a little bit over a year here. And I'm imagine that's when it finally gets voted. Everyone's really waiting for California because that's going to really open up the floodgates, obviously, because it's such a big state.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just getting bigger and bigger. I mean, you probably notice, my brother and I will talk about it where you watch like ESPN or even like NBC, and they'll have the lines on the game, right?
Sure.
Like you look down at the bottom, or they finally let the announcers talk about the lines, because before, it was kind of like, oh, late field goal there, that's going to really help someone out, and that's all they'll talk about. But they were referencing the line to the game, but now. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I heard eventually they're going to make it where you can just sit in your chair watching the game and you can bet if you think a team will score a field goal or a touchdown.
Well, that was my next point. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that was my next point is that, so I'm about 3 to 4 hours from Washington, D.C. in my area. And so the Capitals are going to actually put a sports book in their arena. And I heard the Washington football team now is probably going to do the same thing whenever they get going back, whatever they're doing. So yeah, I mean, and like if somebody comes down and says, "Hey, you want some popcorn or a drink?" Oh, also let me put $50 on a coin toss.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, taboo for so long, but now like the NFL and the NBA and these stadiums, like I think it was the Denver Broncos. They've got like 3 different sports books that they're working with in there. So yeah, it's just getting bigger and bigger. So it's exciting. I think it's fun.
Do you ever do or throw out picks for the prop bets like that for the at the Super Bowl? You can bet on anything like the coin toss, the length of the national anthem, what color Gatorade's going to be poured on the coach at the end of it. Do you ever throw out picks like that, or is that just you just stick with the typical stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for the Super Bowl, for sure, because there are so many prop bets, there's a lot of prop bets. I mean, I think there is like 1,000 different prop bets. Like, there's so many, how long's the national anthem going to be, over under on the time. But typically, their prop bets, like how many yards is Lamar Jackson going to throw for, over 186 or under. That's a whole other set of handicapping, and I don't do that too much.
Okay.
No, but there are definitely people that do.
Okay.
And they specialize in it. But no, I don't do prop bets.
Okay. I mean, that just seems just like good fun and all, and I wouldn't, in my opinion, I would never throw out thousands of dollars, how we were talking about earlier, just on a coin toss or whatever, or even the length of the national anthem. I mean, whoever's singing it could just be like looking at their watch. I mean, they might play some inside bet on it, right?
Right. They usually they'll have limits a lot of time on those bets, and they're not nearly as much compared to being able to bet on a regular game. So like prop bets like that. With the Gatorade color and stuff, they usually limit it to like $500, maybe 1,000.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, that makes sense.
For reasons like you're talking about, where in the NFL, you could get down pretty much as you want, and the reason for that, because even like college basketball, and sometimes they'll have limit on over unders like at $1,000, which is kind of interesting when you think about, well, how come for the NFL they'll take 200,000 on a line or college basketball game? And the reason for that is because the NFL is king, and when I mean king, like that's what most people bet on when they bet.
Yeah.
And so therefore, casinos and sports books allocate the most resources to NFL, and so they're following those teams and the lines the most. Where college football, you could have 100 games on a Saturday, literally. And so it's tough for them to follow all those games. And that's why you'll find, I'm sure most handicappers would agree, is I find most of my success like our college basketball. And because the NFL is just so difficult. They watch that one so closely.
So most of your success is in college basketball. That's what you just said, correct?
Overall, yeah. I mean, as a whole,
okay.
I would say college basketball, golf. I mean, if you ask any handicapper, I think it's gonna be very rare if one of them says NFL, just because lines are so tough. There's usually not an edge there. And the reason, if you think about it, Chris, is because there's typically only 14 or 16 games being played a week.
Yeah.
So we're on a Saturday, you could have over 100 college basketball games. There's no way the sports books can watch all those games, and so you can find edges there.
That makes perfect sense. And plus, I mean, I read about you that you have a 54%-ish success rate.
Yeah, over 1,600 games being played.
Yeah, so that's 800 plus, right?
Yeah. So like, if you think about it, because I had a buddy one time where he was asking how much I charged for the season, to give out picks. And I told him, and then he's like, well, what's your winning percentage? And I said, well, last season it was 57%. And he's like, oh, that's crap. And I'm like, crap. And it's because most people hear that like, oh, this guy wins 60 or 70%. Not over like a lifetime of seasons. You might be able to win that like 60% for like 20 games or maybe 40 games. But when you start like betting on like 500 games or like 1,500 games, that you don't win that much. So like over 54%, you're going to do really well. I think you ask any handicapper, they'll take 54% over a career for sure.
Well, I would think so. I mean, we said something about the coin toss. Yeah, you got it. A 1 out of whatever chances of winning on that. So 54%. I mean, I like those odds.
Yeah. So with how you have to put the juice, right? Like when I said you have to give $110 to the sports book to win 100.
Yeah.
So you have to win 52.4% to break even. So anything above that is profitable, but you start winning like 54% over like 1,600 games or 500 games, it starts to add up.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So, I mean, it adds up eventually. So, obviously, if you're getting more wins and losses, you're going to do pretty well, I would think. But, so, how do I want to ask this part? Is though, if you get into a losing streak, so let's say for a week your picks were just shit. I mean, do you just do you back off, take a few days off, regather yourself? I mean, what do you do to get back in your groove, I guess,
That's a great question, and it kind of goes back to you say, like, if you're getting into, betting, what do you suggest? So that's why if you keep with that same amount that you feel comfortable betting. And so, if anyone's taking notes out there, a good rule of thumb is, you never really bet more than 5%, especially when you're starting out, 5% of your bankroll, right? So let's say you start off, I'm going to work with $1,000 this year, right? So that's saying that, start off betting no more than $50 on a game. And that's kind of like the higher end, 5%. And then you stick with it. That's the benefits of like sticking with it and the way the numbers work out. Like if you hit like a 54% over, a lot of games, that's when it starts to add up. And then next thing next season, your $1,000, if you did really well, would be worth $1,500. And so now you're using like 3% of that. And if there's a game you really like, you put 5% of $1,500. So now you're doing, instead of $50 a game, you're doing 75. And that's how you grow your bankroll without like, sweating bullets and panicking that you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage or anything like that.
That makes sense. Perfect sense. So
yeah, so you don't want to bet any more than 5% of your bankroll, and typically do like 3%. And if there's a game you really like, you go 5%, and then that way, your bankroll, you won't roll through it, by week 3.
So do you kind of influence a lot of risk reward ratios? So if, kind of what you're saying. So hey, if I bet $5, if maybe 3-1, I'll win $15. This is going small numbers, obviously. We're betting bigger, but is that kind of like what you would push your picks towards, or you kind of throw out, hey, this is going to be a home run, 100% chance you're not going to lose?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when we talk about it on the podcast, we'll talk about games that we like, and then sometimes we'll come across games that will be like, hey, this is a game we really, really like. And so what does that mean? Well, that is the time to throw like 5% down on that game.
Okay.
And, sometimes there's just games you love, like, where I really, really like a game that maybe happens like once or twice a month where where I'll stack it up a little bit more than normal. Because, I'll see like they're missing something here, or, that line's off. So, like a game where the line's off that sticks out to me is a couple of years ago when the Rams played the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and the Rams came out as the favorites. The Rams were like -1, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me here. I'm like, Jared Goff's going to beat Tom Brady? I mean, there's just no way. So
100%.
That was one where I'm like, this line is off. So, it happens every once in a while. And by the way, you don't want to bet against Tom Brady most of the time.
Yeah, I've been learning that. It just seems like with age, he's like a wine. He just keeps getting better and better. I mean, it's
Well, there's a statistic, Chris, that when he and Belichick were playing together, that they covered the line, not just won the football game, covered the line almost 60% of the time. So I'm a big fan of Tom Brady, so I didn't bet against him until probably like the last year of his career in New England. I bet against him a couple times, and that was the first time ever. So I knew better, but there was handicappers where, and it's not a fault to them at all, where their numbers just matched up like, hey, you got to go against the Patriots here because that's what the numbers were saying. So from a numbers perspective, they were doing the right thing, but I'm just like, I'm not going against Tom or Bill. That's just, you're not going to win that way.
It's wrong. So speaking of that, so 70, usually with lines and money and all that good stuff, 70 or 80% of the time, is it going to be within a touchdown with the points?
So that's a good question. It is. Yeah, it will be. Like the number that the line falls on, the margin of victory that it falls on the most is 3 and then 7. So yes, the majority of the time it does fall between 7.
Yeah, I got that from Pat McAfee, so I ain't gonna.
Did you?
Yeah, it was just one of his YouTube videos I was listening to, so I was like, oh,
yeah.
I never thought about that, but it does make kind of perfect sense. I mean, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you like, especially in the NFL, if you look at lines, like it's very rare for the line to get double digits. For it to get to 10 points, like for a line to be 10 points, like that team's quite a bit better, or they've got a home field advantage.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, a lot of times it's difficult for those teams because what you have to imagine is, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, the running back's out this week. Whoever the running back could be, he could play for the Browns or he could play for the Ravens. The starting running back's out. And a lot of times the public will be like, wow, that's going to make a big difference. I'm going to take, the other team this week. And what you have to realize that in the NFL, like professional sports, the guy that's backing up the first stringer, he's a badass too, and there's a lot of difference between these guys. So injuries and, that's where you can pick up some edges is when the line is favoring, a team too much because of an injury here and there. Now, like if a Patrick Mahomes, the statistics came out where like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers are worth like 8 points to their team, which is just a boat, where, like Dak Prescott went out and Andy Dalton came in. That was like 2.5 points, 3 points. It wasn't as much as you would think it is.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of blowing my mind on it because I'm seeing the back end of these things that I guess the way I was just saying, I'm only seeing like just whatever Vegas pulled up. And I was like, oh, okay. But I'm also, how we've talked, I'm not doing reading teams on injuries or what they've done on stats prior to. I'm not doing my whole due diligence. I'm just kind of going on the Vegas side. It's like, okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah, or what the guys on ESPN are saying or whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot to it. And say for injuries, moving forward, if people want to put money on games, like injuries, yeah, they suck. But it's what injury? Left tackle, that can sometimes be more important than the running back or a receiver being out.
Yeah.
Because now the quarterback doesn't get as much protection. But like when it's a running back, you have a few running backs in the NFL like Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey and, guys like that. Like when they go out, it's going to affect the team a little bit. But other guys, it's plug and play.
Makes sense. I mean, you play football. I never played football in my athletic career, but did you have any serious injuries with your? I mean, we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but this makes you wonder though, because Arian Foster was talking about playing football and how he would tell his kids never to play, and just because of he broke with collarbones or broken collarbones and torn meniscus, and it was kind of like mind over matter, but that's what he wanted to do. I mean, is that kind of your mentality when you played? And
Yeah, you do have a different mentality, that's for sure. I broke a collarbone also. I broke my nose and because we didn't have helmets on when we were practicing, and I came down and landed on this guy's nose,
Oh,
this
damn.
guy's head. Um, but I grew up with some really good athletes, and I remember the first time we played tackle school, we were in 8th grade, and he came down on the first play, and he got rocked really hard. And it was probably a concussion looking back on it now, and he was done, right then. So like sometimes I think when you first start playing football, you get hit and you're like, that's it, I'm done. Or you get hit really hard and you're like, where is that guy? I want to, so I think there's a little bit, you have to have a different mentality for sure.
Well, I forgot who said it, but everyone said, I think it's a boxing reference, but you have a game plan until you finally get punched in the nose, and then it all changes.
Yeah.
It all changes then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. When you get hit, and everyone gets hit, when you get hit hard, it's like, that's why I love watching football. Like even at like, lower levels, like high school or college, you're right there and you can see it. And someone get hit really hard and you can see what happens to that guy. Like either, they're kind of like, I don't know about that, or they get really pissed off and the next play they go after him, and that's what's great about football is, I tell my boys, my friend, we went to golf camp today and his 8-year-old brother's like, yeah, he got mad and, kind of threw his putter on the ground. I go, you can't get mad in golf. That doesn't help.
No, dude. Never.
That hurts. But in football, that anger will come, that will help.
It's fuel.
So it's definitely different.
For sure. So you also throw out bets for golf too, correct? Or throw out picks, I guess.
Yeah. Do you follow golf at all?
I play roughly. Well, when I was 13, my uncle got me into golf, and I would play once or twice a week, and that lasted all through college. And then after college, it seems like everyone I was playing with, everyone started living their lives. And I mean, that's no joke towards them or anything. They were just, we're all growing up, so it was hard to get together to play 2 or 3 hours just a round of golf. So, when Tiger was there, I would try to watch all his the major events, and then even when he came back after his little fiasco, I still like when he won the Masters again. I watched it, but I usually just look up to see who wins. I wouldn't say I sit down and actually watch a whole match or anything, but other than that, but yeah.
I didn't pick up a golf club until Tiger got going. Like he revolutionized the game for sure. He made it like seem like a cool sport. And so I started playing golf when he started being really big. And that's if I'm not with my family or doing it, I try to golf. I love golf. And so I watch it religiously as well. And, there's different ways to bet on golf. Like you can bet like who you think is going to win the tournament, which is really, really hard. What I like to do is you can do individual matchups. So like Bolt versus Chris, who's going to win this week, versus me versus you.
Yeah.
And you can bet on just that matchup. And then like today they played, because they're going to play again tomorrow. And so then they might just have a matchup just Friday, like the two of us, me versus you on Friday. That's it. Who do you think is going to win? And so that's the way that I play when it comes to golf.
Oh, I see. I gotcha.
Yeah. And so I like it. I think you can definitely find an edge there. Like, for example, this week I took Ricky Fowler over Phil Mickelson.
Ooh, that's a bold move, right?
Right. Well, see, the course they're playing is a very tight course, and Phil isn't really known for being accurate off the tee box.
See, I would never know something like that.
And then Ricky Fowler, that name might be familiar to people. He hasn't had a very good year, and he actually wasn't able to play in the U.S. Open last week. So he's missing these majors, which he's not accustomed to doing. He played like 40 in a row. So I think he's going to be pretty pissed off and really, zeroed in. I checked the score today. They're both at -1. So we'll see what happens.
Well, that's cool. Like how you said they're pissed off and you're reading their emotions like that. Yeah, that's something I would never even pick up on. I mean,
I think that's kind of, as far as me speaking for myself with my handicapping, I do think like trying to get in the mind of an athlete helps a lot. Like I do that quite a bit. Well, I'm like, that could be pissed off. Like, or if the press says something about someone, recently they did it with Kevin Durant, for the Nets.
Were they compared to Michael Jordan?
Well, they compared him to the Greek Freak.
Steve Kerr did. Oh, they compared to Monte? Oh, okay. Okay. So I didn't mean to cut you off there. I thought, okay, go ahead.
No, all good. And so, it kind of came out that KD, someone was doing that, making that comparison. KD was like, compare me to the Greek Freak. And then KD just went off in the playoffs. I mean, if it wasn't for him playing with the Nets, they would have lost by 40 every game, So I think trying to get into the minds of the athletes, handicapping as well.
Gotcha. I mean, because that makes perfect sense. Just because, kind of what you were saying, get into the minds of the athletes and how recently what I just said, I saw where Steve Kerr said something about comparing Kevin Durant to Michael Jordan. And then after watching did you watch the Last Dance documentary?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Scottie Pippen not wanting to go in for that last shot. I forgot which episode it was or which game it was, but it's just like what when I was probably 13, 14 years old when that stuff was going on, I had no idea. I was like, well, send in Pippen, then he doesn't go in. I would never know anything, like that.
Right.
I can't read that stuff. I'm just what the hell, man? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, exactly. So then that next game after Scottie does that, that's when it would be time to evaluate, if you think you can get an edge there or not. Like tonight, the Suns play the Clippers, right? And the game's in LA, and Chris Paul's coming back, and so everyone's really excited about it. And the Suns are actually favored by 1 on the road. And I look at that line, and I'm like, I don't think so. I think like the Clippers have been playing. They've been playing them tough. Now they're back at home in front of their home crowd. And like I said, I think they're going to be kind of pissed off. I would take the Clippers tonight.
That makes perfect sense, though. See, I would have thought about something like that. Huh.
Yeah.
So you would say Clippers all the way, huh? That's your pick for tonight.
Well, I wouldn't say put your mortgage on it, Chris, but I would say I'd say I like them. Yeah.
No, the last time I did a money bet was the Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier fight. And we have a casino. It's in West Virginia. I guess you follow Barstool Sports, right?
I'm familiar with them, yes.
Okay, so they have the Rough and Rowdy. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a bunch of amateurs like me go up there and say, "Hey, yeah, I want to fight you, man. Come on." And they just pick some random dude to go fight you. But anyway, I was at the casino the night of that fight because I was traveling, and my uncle and I stopped.
Really?
Yeah, I stopped. I was like, "Yeah, I'll throw $20 on Connor." And obviously he lost, so I lost $20. And then after that, I was just pissed off because like, what the hell? Because I don't know. But sometimes, I mean, my brother will also do the FanDuel stuff, and they'll throw out stuff like, hey, if you like, they had a recent promotion. I think the Wizards were playing the Celtics, and they said if they were giving you plus like 80 points or something, and it was like,
right,
yeah, it was just like a sucker you win bet just to get in there and get your money. Then obviously you win, and then you just keep playing, but.
And then you give it back to them.
Yeah,
right?
Well, eventually, right. I guess that's our thing. Unless maybe if I go to you and try to get some 54%, at least gain some money, right?
Yep. That's what I say. Like if someone was asking me one time on an interview about do I feel bad when the games lose when I give them out on the podcast when I give out picks, and the ones that I give out on the picks, I play the same game. So yeah, I'm not happy when it happens. But if you follow someone that you respect over like a season, if you just tune in for like a week or two and play their picks, you could lose. But hopefully, if they know what they're doing, if you play with them the whole season, hopefully you'll come out on top.
Do you know who Stu Feiner is? I mean, I would have.
I've heard of him.
So
yeah.
he's supposed to be like one of the Did you ever see the movie Two for the Money with Matthew McConaughey? It's all about kind of basically what you do for a living. It's all about they would call in, like someone like me would call you, Bolt, and say, hey, who am I picking this week for whatever? And apparently he was supposed to be one of the badass people, and I guess he does work for Dave Portnoy at Barstool Sports, or he has his own thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But with that Matthew McConaughey, when he was the handicapper, right? He
Yeah,
gave
there
his
you
picks.
go. Yeah. The movie apparently is based off him. And
okay. That I like Matthew. I watched that movie. That was very entertaining. It didn't seem very realistic though, like because someone can get on hot streaks and you can get on a cold streak too. Like if you talk to a handicapper, it's like they've won 10 in a row and they could lose 10 in a row too. That's why it's kind of a numbers game. That's where how the mathematicians look at it.
Sure.
But that was a cool movie. I like that.
Yeah. It brought things in perspective for me, and like how we kind of were talking about earlier, circling back, like, if you go behind the scenes of it all, the guy behind the curtain, I don't ever see that part of it. I just see, I guess, all the fun stuff and what Vegas wants you to see and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I just, when I think of sports handicappers and stuff, that's kind of what comes to my mind. And it took for me, it's like, oh, he must be the number one guy in this field. But even you got guys like Colin Cowherd who, they'll throw out their picks and stuff too. But I mean, you can take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah. You have actually Colin for the most part is, I don't know if he'd consider himself a handicapper, so he's not bad. I think last year he might have had a rough year because I noticed like people were, putting things on Twitter and stuff, which is kind of weak when people do that. Like if you don't, Colin's not charging for his picks. So, you don't have to listen to him if you don't want to, but but yeah, it's interesting. Like those guys on like ESPN and stuff, and they're not even using the lines. They're just trying to pick the winner of the game. Like, who do you think will win this game? Detroit or Green Bay, and they have difficulty just picking the winner, much less if there was a spread involved,
Yeah.
So.
Well, doesn't Charles Barkley, he usually does that almost every on his TNT stuff. Doesn't he do that, try to pick winners him and Shaq and Kenny? But
yeah.
But there was an article that came out about it's a couple of years ago. He lost $30 million in betting, I think it was.
Oh, that Chuck did?
Yeah, old Chuck did, man.
Yeah, like same thing with John Daly.
Yeah.
John Daly, the golfer, said, I couldn't imagine that. I mean, I've been at the casinos before. I'm sure there's people listening, and maybe you have too. Where I saw a guy, playing like three hands at $200,000 a pop.
Don't doubt it.
And I'm like, man, that's a lot. And if I did that, I felt like saying, hey, buddy, you should go over to the sports book and do that. I mean, that's just personally how I do it. Like I can walk through a casino and not even look at the tables. That just doesn't do it for me. I mean, I used to do that when I was younger, when I was in college and we'd go to the casinos and I'd just get my ass kicked playing blackjack and,
I've been there.
And so I'm done with those games. I was done with those games a long time ago. My brother-in-law, we went to the casino and he was getting waxed at the tables. And finally I said, why don't you come on over here to the sports book a little bit? And so, we got his money back for him, luckily, because we were playing. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't happen often, but at least you got it back,
Yeah, I know. He owes me one for that.
Yeah,
I said, see, I told you.
He should. Yeah, usually I'm just a guy running with my tail between my legs. And I was like, well, I guess I'll take my L for the night. I didn't do so well.
It's the worst feeling. Like if you have 20 and the dealer throws over the 21, it's just such a terrible feeling.
Yeah, because right there, you have the biggest. I mean, I don't. the biggest little baby maker in your pants in the world on earth, and all of a sudden that comes out and you're like, oh, you got some big dick energy going and it's done, dude. Yeah. And it's just, yeah, man, I've been there because, I mean, I had one small gambling story. Me and my buddies went on a fishing trip, and I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's called Cherokee, North Carolina.
No.
Okay, so it's roughly, I'm in Virginia, so it's in, is it Tennessee or North Carolina? I can't remember. It's in the Smoky Mountains. Anyway, they got a casino there. I dropped $20 in on blackjack, got up to, I think it was $450. In roughly an hour. Yeah, in roughly an hour. And my buddies were standing behind me, and they were like, "Dude, stop! You're done. Get out. Come on, you paid for everything. You're done. Get out." And I was like, "No, I got more. I got more." I had that big dick energy going. I was like, "Man, I know this guy." All of a sudden, 10 minutes later, nothing.
Gone.
Yeah, that
terrible
quick,
feeling,
man, dude.
Yeah.
Just walked out of the casino. Well, boys. I guess.
I think everyone's been there, Chris. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, well, we touched on it earlier. Just how do you deal with that type of emotions? And it's.
You try to take. You know what? Honestly, try to take the emotion out. It's the same thing like with the stock market. If you're investing in a stock and it goes down, and it's like, I think too much people get emotional and then they sell. Right? They're like, oh, I got to get out before it goes lower, and then next thing you know, a month later, it's up 30% from where it was, So try to take the emotion out of it, to be honest. And that's the hardest part, I think, because there's all this noise, right, from the ESPNs and all these different outlets and newspapers and, this team's best, this player's the best, and you just got to block it all out and, go with, your handicapping.
Yeah, I have a buddy and we dabble a little bit in the stock market, but – talk about emotions and what you're just saying. If I see, like somebody like you, Bolt, say like, oh man, I got a hot tip for you this week. If I get on it late, oh man, it's like I get fear of missing out, and I got to jump on it. I got to jump on it, and then all of a sudden, I'm screwed. But then, just stock market wise. But then, if you miss out on the bet, I've been there emotionally, like. When we were playing FanDuel and stuff, and this was earlier, like in college. I guess FanDuel wasn't around. Maybe we were playing like an offshore betting site. I can't remember if it was legal in Virginia or not, but I was betting on something and I lost. And I was like, oh, I can win it back. I can win it back. And I just immediately I didn't let my emotions sink in. I just immediately just threw it into a random bet, lost even more. And that's when when I learned, it's like, okay, you got to take a time out sometimes, dude.
Yeah,
you learn a lot.
Time out.
Yeah, you learn a lot from it, man. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of good. I don't know. Like I said, it's a great feeling when you win, but man, sure it does suck when you lose, dude.
No kidding, and that it does suck, and so that's where you gotta be like, you gotta put it in perspective, and do it with the amounts that you feel comfortable with, and it won't kill you if you lost it.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Use it kind of like your entertainment money, like you're going to the movie, pizza money, if that's what works for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. You win a little bit, you can take your girl out on a weekend and go from there.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. Let's I think I got you for an hour. I want to respect your time. I think we've been going for about an hour, so yeah, I like ending on a good positive vibe right there. Win some money, take your girl out, treat yourself, I guess, and somebody else.
There you go.
But before we get off here, Bolt, you're a bad dude. If anybody wants to get your picks or find your podcast or anything about you, how do they do that? Where you at on the socials and all that good stuff?
Yeah, thank you. So we talked about our podcast, Bolt Brady and His Bro. So we're on, Apple and Spotify, and we really ramp up starting in July. We go once a week through July, through the Super Bowl. And then on Instagram at Bolt Brady Picks, and then Facebook, we've got Facebook as well. And then Twitter, Bolt Brady Picks as well.
Gotcha, man. It's all good. All right. Everyone heard it here. Bolt, you're a bad dude. Thanks for being here. I appreciate your time. I love it, man.
Thanks, Chris. Had a good time, buddy.
All right, man. We'll do it again hopefully soon.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Take it easy.
Sports.